Hello, welcome back to Steel Bear Academy. My name is Jonathan, and today I'm going to be sharing with you how to select the features you want in your hunting rifle. Now this is going to be kind of oriented towards somebody who is thinking about buying their first hunting rifle, or maybe it's their first gun and it's going to be a hunting rifle. It's more oriented toward the beginner, not so much somebody who is experienced and is looking for very specific information about their hunting rifles. So first thing I want to cover is that you need to decide what purpose you're buying your hunting rifle for. No one gun can do everything. And that's something that a lot of new gun owners in particular, new gun owners, and even perhaps new to a particular genre of gun, make a mistake about. They think that one gun can do everything, or they want to just buy one gun that they think will cover all the bases for all the different types of guns in that category. And it's just not possible. Some things are mutually exclusive. So when it comes to a hunting gun, probably the thing that is most important, I would say, well, there are many things that are important, but I think the main feature of a hunting rifle over a other type of rifle is the weight. So hunting rifles pretty much always need to be lightweight. There are a few instances where weight is not a big issue, but weight is really important. And so if you have something that is low weight, it by definition can't have a lot of other things unless you use some really expensive materials to get those features. So the idea of having one gun that can do everything, if you put all that stuff onto one gun, it can't do the thing that it was intended to do, which is be lightweight. But it can do a bunch of other stuff. However, now you're you've missed the mark on the hunting gun. So it'll make more sense as we go along, but keep that in mind when you start. Don't expect this one hunting gun to be perfect for all hunting situations. You kind of pick a specific type of animal, or perhaps a range of animals that this gun could be used to hunt for, and you also kind of have to pick what the method in which you're going to hunt is going to be. That will also sort of dictate what type of gun you have. So again, just want to start off by one gun can't do everything. So don't try to. Just pick the features that you want for your intended purpose. So the first thing I want to cover is the weight. In order to make a gun lightweight, I have several guns on the table here to show you. This is a Savage 110 Hog Hunter. These guns have all been safety checked. They are all unloaded. In order to make a gun lightweight, it has to use materials that are lightweight. So you're going to need a synthetic stock, most likely. So it's pretty unlikely you're going to be able to use wood. It's just a little bit too heavy for the purpose of lightweightness. Your barrel profile, which is the thickness of your barrel, is going to be a big factor in how lightweight your gun is. This gun is actually kind of medium profile. So I kind of have three different profiles of barrel thickness. There's kind of sporter or pencil barrel. Those are very thin. Those are really, really thin, much thinner than this. This is medium. That's kind of in the medium. That's in the middle. And then there's varmint profile or heavy profile, which is more like this gun. So this is a Remington 700. Perhaps you are able to see the difference in profile. It doesn't seem like a lot in the dark, but it is sizable in the weight category. So remember how I said that most hunting guns are lightweight? There's kind of an exception. The exception is if you have no intention of carrying the gun around with you. So if your gun is going to be one where you don't carry it with you, like, with a sling or, just in your hands, then weight is not really a big factor. In fact, weight would actually be a benefit to have more weight, because more weight makes it easier to shoot generally. It settles down the gun, it makes it so your trigger pulls disturb your sight picture less. Weight is good if you don't have to cart your gun around. However, in most hunting situations, you're going to have to do some sort of hiking. You're going to have to do some sort of carrying the gun with you. This is kind of more of a varmint or predator type gun. That's usually the defining feature, is the heavier barrel. The heavier barrel means that it will heat up less, and if your barrel heats up less with each shot, you can shoot longer without having any change in accuracy, or I should say less of a change in accuracy. So if you're somebody who is going to set up like on the porch of your deck and you've got a big prairie out there to look out, then you could get that type of gun where you don't have to carry it anywhere. You just bring it out to sit on your porch, and then you sit there and you take shots at little tiny animals, you know, prairie dogs or squirrels or what have you. Then weight doesn't matter there. But by and large, weight is a good thing to try to keep low. And you got to be careful, because the weight really adds up over time and with features. So this gun is not a perfect example of a lightweight gun, of a lightweight hunting rifle, but it's got a lot of things to show you that I could show you with. So the first thing is try to make it lightweight. As part of that, there's different action types you can get. So most people think of a hunting gun as a bolt action rifle, which is one of these. A bolt action rifle is one in which you have a barrel and then you have some sort of bolt action, meaning you've got a bolt attached to some sort of handle that you can move back and forth, and then it locks down and so that you can fire it. Now, most of them are multi-round or repeating firearms, meaning you can shoot more than one round without having to totally reload. In this case, it's by a magazine. You could put like 4 rounds in here, insert it into the gun, and then you chamber a round, and now you fire the round, boom. Then you have to open the action, pull back, that'll eject your spent round, and then you can have a new round that's loaded up, ready to put in there, and you chamber the next round, and you can continue that until you're out of rounds. Most bolt action rifles are like that. You can get single shot bolt action rifles, but they're far less frequent. However, you can get single shot guns, basically kind of looks like a shotgun, like a double barreled shotgun, but with one barrel, sometimes even 2. And that would be more of a break action. That's different than bolt action. And then there's also lever action guns. So a lever action gun is one in which you would have a lever at the bottom, and it's another repeating design. So you've got a magazine tube at the bottom where you've got many rounds, and then you would swing your lever forward to get rounds out of the chamber and then pull it back to get rounds into the chamber. So it's just another way in which you can design a repeating gun. Those ones have their own limitations on cartridge choice, by virtue of them having a tubular magazine as opposed to a detachable one like this. By and large, I think the detachable ones are a little better. If I had my choice, I'd probably pick a detachable one. And then there is also, so we've covered a few action types: bolt action, break action, which would be like single shot, lever action, which I don't have to show you, but you get the idea. And then we have semi-automatic. So semi-automatic means that you would be able to, your gun will automatically eject spent rounds into and out of, and get rounds into the chamber every time you pull the trigger. So every time you pull the trigger, something happens so that the gun will automatically eject a spent round out of the chamber, and then on the way forward, your bolt will catch a new round, put it into the chamber. So it does it for you. It's another repeating gun, but it does it automatically, the semi-automatic part of it. Now, when you're picking one of these action types for your hunting gun, you need to understand that if you add more complexity and more ability to repeat, meaning more ability to shoot rounds without having to reload, it adds weight, because you have to build the rifle to allow it to do that. And that takes weight. It takes weight to be able to add the ability to shoot rounds in quick succession without totally reloading. So in the simplicity world, break action would be the simplest. You have almost no action whatsoever. You basically just have a hinge. Next would probably be Probably bolt action would be next in terms of simplicity, in terms of weight at least. So with a bolt action, you have basically the bolt and the receiver and then the barrel. There's not much else that goes into it. With a lever action gun, which would be the next heaviest action type, you have the magazine tube, which you have to store your rounds in. You've got that, which is extra weight. And then you've got the lever, and you've got, it's kind of a wash or a draw in terms of the weight difference between those. But I think the bolt action still is a little lighter generally than a lever action gun. And a bolt action gun can be built to withstand more higher pressure rounds, more powerful rounds. So if you need a gun that shoots a more powerful caliber, I don't think they go up very high in terms of pressure of lever action guns. Maybe there's a few, but bolt action guns can go very high and very high pressure. The most powerful rounds are chamberable in a bolt action rifle. And then at the top of weight would be semi-automatic. So a semi-automatic gun, you have a lot of weight and stuff to be able to have that semi-automatic function. So I would say a semi-automatic rifle it doesn't win in the weight category. However, it might be something that you want if you're going to shoot a lot of animals quickly. But most hunting situations are not really like that. I think perhaps a notable exception would be like if you have to shoot a lot of pigs. People use these a lot, not necessarily this gun, but semi-automatic guns to shoot a lot of wild hogs that are invasive, and those are kind of a big animal, so you could probably hit them even while they're moving. Whereas if you're going to shoot something very far away, and you're going to shoot something that is just a single animal, then a bolt action rifle will probably be better served for the weight, if that makes sense. Like semi-automatic is great. If you didn't have to move and you got the same amount of accuracy out of a semi-automatic that you get out of a bolt action or a break action, then that would be cool. But it doesn't usually end up that way. Semi-automatic tends to be lower accuracy for the price. It's harder to build a semi-automatic gun for the same amount of money that it takes to build a accurate bolt action rifle. So this gun is like $700 with everything, with the scope and the rings and the muzzle brake on it. Whereas this gun is like $1,300 to $1,500, and it's not as accurate, meaning it doesn't have it can't hold as tight a groups as the bolt gun. So I would start off by saying semi-automatic guns are probably not the way to go if you are looking for the lightest weight gun possible. And I think you probably should be if you're going to be hiking at all, which most people are when they're hunting. So lightweight is going to come up over and over and over again, but that just is probably the most pivotal thing that changes your weight: the barrel profile and the action type, and also the materials. So if you choose a heavier stock, then it's going to be heavier. So weight's very important. From there, I'm kind of just going to go down the line and talk about various features that are common on many different guns. So I think that for a hunting gun, you definitely want a gun with a sling swivel stud. That's this thing right here, and on the back as well. That allows you to sling your gun, to put a sling on this gun so that you can carry it over your shoulder or wherever you want to carry it on your body. It's pretty much a necessity if you're going to be hiking at all with this gun. I would absolutely recommend getting one with at least one sling swivel stud. Some tactical guns, which this gun is not really a tactical gun, but it uses the same stock as what they call tactical guns. It has two. So this one is it's set up with two sling studs. One of them is intended for a bipod and the other is intended for a sling. But having two is fine, no big deal. You don't really need two on the front though, just so long as you have at least one on the back. There are many different types of rifles, and so when you're picking a gun, you want to make sure that you are buying one that is set up more for hunting. So I think perhaps the most obvious example of one that is not set up for hunting would be one that has a lot of MOA built into the top rail. So some guns will have a rail on the top of their gun here, and it will have extra elevation built into it, meaning you can mount the scope higher, let's say, and it lets you shoot farther with your scope, to put it simply. It's not really necessary on a hunting gun, so I wouldn't really worry too much about that. If you have a stock that is very heavy and very adjustable, that's kind of a giveaway of a competition style rifle. Again, competition rifles are not hunting rifles. They could certainly be used for that, but they don't fit into doing the hunting job the best as it can, so long as you're looking for lightweight, because those are not lightweight. Those heavy stocks are not lightweight. I would not recommend those for a hunting gun. And then probably finally is the heavy barrel. If you're getting a competition style gun, a heavy barrel is pretty much a necessity and pretty much par for the course. So this gun is not a competition gun, but you know, you could perhaps use it in a pinch for that, but it's not set up to be that way. With a different stock, it absolutely could be. So thicker profile is indicative of varmint guns. You know, one where you set it up and you take shots at little tiny animals very far away, but you don't care about the weight, so you're not hiking. Or it's indicative of a competition rifle. And this one's not exactly a competition rifle, but you kind of could use it for that. Next, I want to cover whether or not you should have a scope included or not. So this gun here actually came with a scope, but not this one. So it came with a little cheapy scope, and I replaced it with a better scope. To me, I didn't buy this gun with the intention of using that scope. I already knew ahead of time I didn't want that scope. It didn't seem like it was quality enough for what I wanted the application for. I wanted something better quality, and they gave me a kind of not so great a quality scope, and I replaced it with a better quality scope. I think that there are some guns that come with a good quality scope, or at least pretty good, and you don't really need to replace those if you're just going hunting, unless you wanted a specific scope that does a specific thing. But generally, most scopes that come on hunting rifles are decent enough for most applications, so long as you tighten them down and zero them and make sure they don't move around. But assuming that you do a good job at mounting your scope, and assuming that it's a decent scope and decent rings and bases, or in this case a single piece, so long as those are all good, so long as they're all good quality, the scope itself, so long as you get one with a decent one, then it's probably fine. You know, if I could have had this scope attached to this rifle from the get-go, I would have paid more money to have it attached from the get-go. But a lot of rifles that come with a scope are not that great. So I would say if you had the choice, I would probably pick one without a scope and then pick the exact scope that you want, rather than buy a combo, a combo with a scope and a rifle, and then change out the scope, which I did on that rifle there. I would generally rather just have no scope and then buy my own scope. But that's just me. And there's a whole philosophy on how to pick the scope that you want. And this video cannot cover all the things that go into picking your scope. But I would suggest that you anticipate that you'll spend at the minimum at least $100 to $200 on your scope, and perhaps more, like perhaps at least $400 if you want more features on your scope. Really, the sky's the limit when it comes to a scope. So you can always spend more, but I think ballpark, a good estimate would be around $400 would be pretty would have a lot of choices, and I think they would cover most people's needs in terms of most hunting applications, perhaps except for very high power variable scopes for kind of farther distances. It might not cover that, but if you're within 300 yards, I think 400 is a perfectly good budget for a scope, and you could probably do less if you wanted to spend less. So I'd recommend getting one without a scope if you can. There's a video by Gunblue 490, I believe, and he does a really good job of explaining kind of what types of features you want on your scope. And I think I can link that down in the description. It is a really good video. Next thing to cover, I would say, is materials. So what do you want your gun to be made out of? Particularly the metal. So these guns, well, actually these two guns are, steel, regular coated in some sort of finished steel. They're not stainless steel, I don't believe. And your main choice is, do you want stainless steel or do you want regular steel that is coated? On this gun, I actually do have a stainless steel barrel. You can see that there. And for this gun, I mostly did it for looks. I like the look of that. It's not so much a necessity. And I think that's kind of the name of the game. If you think stainless steel is significantly better at preventing rust, I think you're right. But so long as you keep your gun with, coated with oil and you regularly clean it and you make sure you clean it if you accidentally get it wet, then I think, this type of steel is perfectly fine for corrosion resistance. In terms of every other type of durability, I think they are both equal. You don't really have a significant advantage in terms of durability of your action or your barrel. So I'd say it's kind of a wash. Just pick whichever one you like. Stainless steel ones tend to be a little more expensive. I would also say that you should pick polymer for your stock, if possible. Wood is just a less overall durable material. It's a natural material. It can split, it can crack, and it is more susceptible to water damage, which you probably don't want to be susceptible to water damage in your scope. So that'd be materials. The next thing to look at would be some other features. So, as I talked about at the beginning, a feature is kind of like, you have a checklist of things that your bolt action rifle can do. And one of those features is having a free floating barrel. So I think this gun does have a free floated barrel. I don't remember for sure. Let's see. I can use my script here to determine that. So a free floated barrel is one in which the stock is not touching the barrel at any point along the action. So this one looks to be free floated. I can put this paper in here and it is not touching the barrel at any point along the way. And free floating is a nice feature because it increases your accuracy. However, don't think that just because a gun is not free floated means it's not accurate. So this gun here, I do not believe is free floated. In fact, I am positive it is not. However, this gun is capable of just as good or better accuracy than that gun. So, there are conflicting features. These are not the same exact gun and they're not the same type of gun. However, free floating is a nice feature and it is universally considered something that increases accuracy generally, but it's not absolutely critical. And I think the difference between free floating and not free floating is negligible for a hunting application unless you are shooting at very small targets very far away. And that would be like varmint hunting or shooting, prairie dogs at 400 or 500 yards, sitting on the bench of sitting on the chair on your porch with a prairie in front of your house. So generally, I don't think it's super necessary, but it is a very nice feature to have. And if you get it, then that's great. So free floating barrel, good thing to have. The next thing I'd say is a adjustable trigger. This has become very popular from Savage. Savage has done this AccuTrigger thing. That's having that little blade in the front there. So we check our gun, make sure it's unloaded. This blade is kind of being like a drop safety, or I should say like a jostling safety. You have to make sure that you pull the blade of this trigger before you can pull the trigger of the main body of the trigger. It also allows your trigger weight to be adjusted. So if you want a very, very light trigger, then you can do that on this type of gun. This is they call this the AccuTrigger. And pretty much most other manufacturers have some version of an AccuTrigger. They call it something else, but they pretty much all have that little blade. They've all got that little blade, and they are all adjustable. So it's a nice feature to have. However, it is not a necessary feature. Excuse me. For example, this gun does not have that. This gun has a blind magazine. It is unloaded. This gun has just a regular old trigger that is very... It's not light exactly. Light's not the right word, but it has no stacking. There is just, you're already at the wall. There is no movement of the trigger. You just apply pressure and click, it fires. So this trigger is really nice. This is the X Mark Pro trigger from Remington. And so adjustable triggers are nice, but don't think they are absolutely necessary. This gun over here also does not have an adjustable trigger. This is basically an AR-10 or DPMS LR308 rifle. It's a big AR-15 basically. This one has a Timney trigger, I believe, or no, it's a Chip McCormick trigger, this one. And it is very, very light. And it's not really adjustable. It just comes from the factory at the poundage that you buy. Like, I think this is a 3.5 pound trigger. So it's nice to be able to adjust it, but don't think it's like a absolutely critical must have it. You can achieve very good accuracy with a non-adjustable trigger. The next thing I would cover is the position of your safety. So on this gun, you've got a 3-position safety, which is back here. So it has 3 positions. This is the fire position. If I pull it back 1 click, that's the, let's call it half safe position. That means the gun can't, the trigger can't be pulled, but you can still work the bolt. So you can still chamber and unchamber rounds, but you can't fire the gun. If you pull it all the way back, then the bolt is also locked and the trigger is locked. So you can't do either. You would then shove it forward, all the way forward to be able to fire the gun. That's a 3-position safety, and that's what Savage uses on a lot of their rifles and other companies too. I think it's a good safety. Then there's on the Remington 700, our safety is right over here. It's this little lever. So I pull it back for safe. It can't fire while it's in the safe position. I push it forward when I'm ready to pull the trigger. Bang. It's another way you can do a safety, and I think it's also very good. There's also another type of safety that is more like a little lever that lever bends and folds like this, but it's another 3-position safety, but it's just located on the right side of the action over here. The AR-10 or AR-15 has a different type of safety altogether, but don't need to cover that. I think that safety position is really inconsequential. It doesn't really matter. The only exception to that would be is if you're a lefty, then I think you would prefer having the tang mounted safety, which is right here, of the Savage, because you can more easily access it with your left thumb, as opposed to if it was over here, you'd have to reach over and do it over here. And that might, I don't know if on the Remington 700, if you had a left-handed gun, you know, your bolt would be on the other side. I don't know if they would change this safety position. I assume it would, but I don't know for sure. On this gun, you can have a lefty gun and it's going to have the same safety position. So if you're a lefty, then I think one of these would be better for you. But other than that, it doesn't really matter, I don't think. I don't really have a preference. I think that I would prefer if this gun did not have that middle position, and instead just always let you open the bolt and close the bolt. I don't really care if I can't close or open my gun. I don't really care about that. I would rather it just have two positions, safe and fire, and on safe, I could still work the bolt. That'd be my preference. The next thing is a adjustable stock. Do you want one? So on this gun is the Accu stock. It's kind of the base, the lowest level of Accu stock, so it doesn't have a comb riser, a comb adjustment here. You can't change this piece, the height of it. But it does have these spacers back here. So these spacers allow you to change the length of pull. So I have it set up for me exactly where I'd like it to be. But I'm pretty tall, so if you were a little shorter, you might want to take off some of these spacers and make it shorter. It's a nice feature to have, but it's not like, you don't need it on the fly. If you were able to get a gun that allows you to do it, at home, like this, then that'd be preferable to me. I don't care about being able to adjust it on the fly like many AR-15 or AR-10s have stocks that do that. I don't really care about that. Just so long as it's adjustable at some point very easily, that'd be my preference. The 700 over here does not have that. It does not have an adjustable stock at all. They probably do make one with it, but this one does not. I would also suggest you get one with a very good recoil pad. So this one has a nice squishy recoil pad. This is the Remington Supercell recoil pad. It's very nice. I highly recommend that recoil pad if you get a chance to feel it. The Savage's is also pretty good. It's pretty squishy. It's much more tacky, I'd say, but it's pretty good. Recoil pads are nice when you are shooting high recoiling guns. It is pretty much a must. You need a good recoil pad. This one's recoil pad is basically non-existent. This one's is like just hard rubber. So I wouldn't recommend this if you're shooting anything with high recoil. This is a 308 and it is semi-automatic, so it soaks up a lot of recoil, and it has a muzzle brake, and it's a really heavy gun. So this gun has very low recoil, so it doesn't hurt your shoulder at all to shoot. But if you had a gun that is even lighter than these guns with a bad recoil pad, it's going to hurt your shoulder quite a bit. Not like permanent damage, it's just going to make your shoulder very tender, and it's not going to be very fun to shoot. So I'd recommend getting a good recoil pad. Next feature I would cover is whether you want a threaded muzzle or not. So this gun has a threaded muzzle. That means that it has threads, kind of like a screw, cut into the top of the end of your barrel, which allows you to put one of these devices on it. This is a muzzle brake. I've got one on this gun, and I have one on the AR-10 there. Looks like that. A muzzle brake reduces the felt and overall recoil of your gun. So it basically, it redirects the hot gases that are coming out backward, therefore pushing your gun forward just slightly, which counteracts the rearward motion of your gun into your shoulder. So it's kind of like trying to make it a little rocket ship that flies off. So it reduces the felt recoil in your shoulder. A flash hider does not do that generally, and a compensator does not do that either. So a muzzle brake is a recoil reduction muzzle device. A suppressor also reduces recoil significantly, but a suppressor also lowers the noise signature. The muzzle brake definitely makes it louder. So muzzle brake makes it very loud. So if that's something you're concerned about, then you might not want to put a muzzle brake on your gun. However, a muzzle brake is very nice if you're shooting a very high recoiling gun. So these guns are all 308. You know, this gun does not have a muzzle brake on it, but if this gun was much, much lighter, then I would absolutely want a muzzle brake on it, because 308 is not particularly high recoiling, but when it's in a super lightweight gun, like a 5 to 6 pound gun, then it can hurt. It can be an unpleasant experience. So a muzzle device will allow you to adjust the recoil feel of your gun more so than a non-threaded gun. So this gun, I really can't adjust the amount of recoil that I feel, whereas this gun I can. So this gun does not recoil particularly harsh, but I did want to try putting a muzzle brake on it, so I did. If I had the option of a suppressor, then I probably would use it, but that's a discussion for another day. If you're trying to go for as low a weight as possible, then you probably should get one without a threaded muzzle, because you need to have at least a medium profile barrel to get threaded muzzles. You can get a threaded muzzle on this profile barrel too, by the way. So if you're looking for maximum weight saving, you can skip the threaded barrel. However, at the same time, if you go for maximum weight saving, that's exactly when you would want a threaded muzzle. So, you know, pros and cons. Part of choosing the right gun for you is knowing your own recoil sensitivity. If you really don't like high recoiling guns, then you are probably going to accept more weight in order to reduce the recoil. And part of that would be to get a muzzle brake. A muzzle brake can reduce your felt recoil by like at least 30%, and sometimes as much as 50% for some of those very high recoiling rounds, recoiling cartridges. The next point I would cover is your sights. Do you want iron sights? So this gun has iron sights. That's these here. That's these sights here. Most hunting guns do not have iron sights. This is called a hog hunter, and so it has iron sights. That's its main feature. That's the main defining feature of the hog hunter rifle. And as you can see, even though I have them, I chose to put a scope on it because I find that unless I'm shooting something that is like less than 50 yards away, I can't really see it very well. So for me, with my eyes, I choose to not use the iron sights. Now I know lots of people who say like they could shoot things, you know, they can shoot iron sights out to 200 yards and it's not hard for them. And I think, I don't know what kind of eyes you have, but when I am looking through my eyes, that sounds really hard, and I've tried it and it's not easy, and I can't do it. So it partly might be a skill thing. Like maybe they've developed skills that I don't have, or it very well could be eyesight related. So if you're an older person, or if you're just somebody who doesn't have that great of eyesight, iron sights might not be the choice for you. If you're somebody who's got great eyesight, and you can do it, go for it. The benefit of them is that they are quicker to shoot than a scoped rifle. A scoped rifle, you have some extra eye adjustment for your eyes to do. You have to find where your face needs to be, whereas these are very easy to pick up just as a quick cursory glance, as opposed to kind of finding where your scope is. So long as your scope is properly mounted for your eyes and for your face, for your gun, for your body, it shouldn't be too hard, but it is still not as fast as using iron sights. I'd recommend you choose one without iron sights because your chances of getting one with an iron sight are very low. There's like less than 10 guns across all the manufacturers that I have seen that have iron sights on them that are like popular production level hunting rifles. The Savage Hog Hunter is one of them. The Scout rifles, pretty much every company makes a version of a Scout rifle. Those have iron sights. Needless to say, iron sights are a rarity, and so I say don't even bother about it. You probably wouldn't even want it even if you had it, is my suggestion. But your mileage may vary on that. That's a personal preference thing. Next thing I want to cover is accuracy. Pretty much every bolt-action rifle will have acceptable accuracy for most hunting applications. The exception would be varmint hunting. So if you are shooting, a prairie dog that is like, the body of them, the head and the body are this tall and this big, that's a really small target. In order to be able to hit that reliably at a pretty far distance, you need a gun that is capable of consistent, a consistent variation of where it hits that is pretty small. So if it can hit in a size this small, that's big enough for a prairie dog, right? Or something that is very small like that. But if you have accuracy that is like this big, it's quite possible that you'll miss at a particular distance. Let's say this was the variation at 300 yards. Your bullets will hit somewhere in this circle. Well, it is quite possible that this area over here, and this area over here, and this area over here would miss your target. So you would want something that is more accurate, something that can hold a tighter group. That's when semi-automatic probably will not be the ticket. It's to be able to hold that tight of a group, you need to spend quite a bit of money. Whereas to be able to hold that type of group with a bolt-action rifle, you can spend significantly less money and be able to still do that. So my takeaway from this was, don't get too caught up with accuracy. Like pretty much every hunting gun, every rifle that is sold that is bolt action is going to be acceptable accuracy for like within 300 yards for medium to large game. So like, if you're shooting, hogs up to, deer, or perhaps up to, something is a little larger than a deer, let's say. If you're hunting that type of animal, your vital zone, that's where you're aiming, basically the chest cavity of your animal. If you're able to keep your gun hitting within that variability, then it really is not that important that it is even tighter. Like, yes, it's good to have more accuracy, but it costs money. So for a hunting gun, you don't need super, super good accuracy. Like one MOA is perfectly acceptable. 2 MOA is probably also acceptable for most medium to large game hunting within 300 yards. But if you're shooting beyond 300 yards, you'll probably want a more accurate gun because your vital zone is going to be smaller than the variability of your rounds hitting somewhere in this variable zone, if that makes sense. At the distance that you might be engaging your animal, you might be taking a shot at your animal. So again, my takeaway is if it costs triple the money to get, let's say, a 50% increase in accuracy, it doesn't sound worth it to me. But if it's important to you, like for the varmint hunting thing, then that might be something worth it. But I think so long as you're getting at least 1 MOA of accuracy, that's perfectly acceptable. If you don't know what 1 MOA is, the shortest version of it is basically like your gun creates, as you shoot your gun, you create a pattern of shots that vary within about 1 inch. That's not 1 inch, but about 1 inch at 100 yards. So at 100 yards, your shots are hitting within a circle that is 1 inch big. They can hit anywhere within that circle. And that's essentially what we call 1 MOA of accuracy. It's a 1 MOA capable gun. That's a term that we use to describe the tightness of the groups that the gun can hold at a distance, at a particular distance. That's the short version of it. There's a much longer version of it, but it's not important for you to know. The takeaway again, most hunting guns are all capable of accuracy that is acceptable for most hunting applications. So don't get too caught up on the accuracy factor. The human factor is much more important. Another term you might come across is action length. So action length basically is describing, there are typically two types of action lengths for most hunting guns, most bolt action rifles. This is a short action gun. So that means that the action, the receiver and the ejection port size are short. It's the shorter of the two. And then there's another one called long action, which just means it's a little bit longer of an ejection port, longer of a bolt, bigger magazine, longer magazine, etc. And so it just means that the short action can accommodate the shorter cartridges, the shorter calibers, and then the long action can accommodate the larger calibers. So when you get a longer action gun, it means your gun is a little heavier, a little longer. So it just means it's not really a big deal. It just means that if you pick a caliber that needs a long action, then it's going to need a long action. You can't get a short action for a long caliber. The next thing I want to cover is price. I would suggest that you expect to spend somewhere between $300 and $800 for a hunting rifle. Sometimes that will include a scope, sometimes not. A basic scope, I should say. So you should expect to spend $300 to $800 and then expect to spend more for the scope. So if you spend $300 for your rifle, expect that you could spend another $200 or up to $400 for your scope. Same thing holds true with an $800 rifle. If you buy at the upper end, you should still expect to spend somewhere between $200 and $400 for a basic scope. When it comes to spending more money on your hunting rifle, there's not a huge appreciable advantage to spending more on your gun. I think it's kind of like cars. Your hunting gun can, so long as it can kill the animal, so long as you're able to kill the animal, your gun is really, you don't get extra points. Your gun is not more lethal if you have better finishes, nicer stocks, if it saves weight because of special, very expensive lightweight materials. None of those things amount to the animal being more dead. Those don't really factor in. Perhaps the only one that does is accuracy. And as we already covered, most bolt action guns are accurate enough that it doesn't really matter most of the time. That's not the limiting factor. I think it's kind of like a car. Like if you buy a Honda Civic, it doesn't really, that will get you from point A to point B. If you buy a BMW, that will also get you from point A to point B. A Mercedes will also get you from point A to point B. A Lamborghini will also get you from point A to point B. The difference in all those prices is not really, it's not in the thing that actually matters, to me at least. Like you'll still get to where you need to go. The difference is, how do you feel about your car? How do you like your car? What kind of things do other people say about your car? What does it reflect on your status? You definitely get more by paying more, generally. But the question is it worth it? Does it make my gun better at doing the thing I wanted it to do? My goal for this was to buy a hunting rifle. I wasn't trying to buy a thing that makes all the boys excited to see it at the range. It wasn't a thing to try to make all the girls excited to see me shooting it. Those were not the intended purpose. So if that was your intended purpose, then prepare to spend more money. But if you just care about, will the gun perform well at hunting, then expect to spend $300 to $800. I don't think you need to spend more, and I don't think you really can spend less. That's like the bottom of the price, the minimum price. However, it's a pretty low price for a gun, and I would also say that don't think that there's a huge variation of ability for your gun to do its job within that range. The $300 gun will probably perform pretty much the same as the $800 gun. It's just depending on like finishes and smoothness of your action, you know, the finish of your gun. You know, do you want a nice, rich, deep bluing, or do you want this kind of matte, very industrial looking black? Or, you know, the smoothness of your bolt, are you okay with having it be a little more gritty? Or do you want something that's super smooth, that feels like it's butter gliding over ball bearings, you know? Those kinds of things are what you get when you pay more money. So that'd be my recommendation for that. Don't spend too much money on the bolt action rifle. It's not going to do you much better in terms of actually hitting your animal. And one of the last things, which is probably one of the things that is most important when it comes to a gun, is your caliber. So you have to choose a caliber. And a caliber is basically like a recipe. It's basically like a recipe for a particular creation. Whenever you order this recipe, you expect it to taste a certain way. You expect it to have these certain qualities. Like when you go to Chipotle, you expect that thing from Chipotle to taste pretty much the same as every other Chipotle, with very little variation. And if Chipotle sold you that recipe, then you could create the exact same thing at home. And if there was some sort of gun that shot a burrito, then and it only took Chipotle ammo, then you could know that I can build a gun that shoots Chipotle ammo because I know what that recipe entails. So it's a way to uniformly have a recipe that everyone can make and will work in everybody's gun. So when you pick a caliber, you are choosing what type of critter you are going after, what type of hunting you are going to do. I'm not going to talk about certain calibers that are not typically chambered in rifles. So you can hunt with any caliber of gun you want. You can hunt with a bow and arrow. I'm not going to cover pistol calibers, and I'm not going to cover straight-walled calibers, straight-walled hunting or rifle calibers, and I'm not going to cover shotgun calibers either, because those are not what we typically think of when we think of a bolt-action rifle. So first off, you need to select what size of game you're going to be hunting, and again, that goes back to purpose. If you're going to be hunting something very small, or like little predators, like coyotes maybe, then you have kind of a band of acceptable cartridges that are powerful enough for that role, but are not too powerful and will not be, let's say, detrimental to you being able to harvest that animal. So for predators and small game, you have kind of this is my version of what I think are acceptable calibers for that purpose. 22 long rifle, 17 HMR, 22 250, 243 Winchester, 223 Remington, and maybe 300 Blackout. That one's kind of an interesting one. But those calibers are all they are either very small and very fast, or they are lower power threshold, let's say, or some combination of those qualities. Typically very fast, very small is kind of the trend there, and typically relatively lightweight, with the exception of 300 Blackout. Those would be typical for small game. The next caliber band of calibers that I would suggest to choose from is the medium size game. So that's somewhere between like shooting something that's bigger than a coyote but smaller than, like, I don't know, an elk, or smaller than a like a large deer, let's say. Somewhere in there. It's hard to know exactly what your definition of medium size is, but that's kind of my definition. So in that category, I would suggest just 4 calibers. And there are more calibers you could choose, but I'm just going to give you 4. My suggestion would be 308 Winchester, 6.5 Creedmoor, 7mm .08, 7mm .08, or 243 Winchester. And you notice that 243 was in both categories. So those ones are kind of medium power. They are light recoiling, generally light recoiling, and they are capable of taking medium-sized game very consistently. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't use those on bigger game, but the general consensus is you should pick something more powerful. So the next category would be medium large to larger game. And this is where some of the more higher recoiling calibers are present. Not all of them, but and again, the categories kind of blend together at the upper end of that acceptable power range. So the ones that I'm speaking of are 30-06 Springfield or 270 Winchester. Those ones both flex at the top end of the medium game and at the bottom end of the large game or medium large game. And then the next ones would be 300 Win Mag and then 7mm Rem Mag. Those would be at kind of the upper end of that category of medium large to larger game. And then from there are specialty calibers that I'm sure somebody who is interested in going and hunting that type of animal does not need this type of video to look into. Those are high recoiling, very powerful calibers. So you pick the caliber based on, number one, what you're going to be hunting, the size mostly, and number two, the level of recoil that you want. So each of those calibers has different recoil characteristics, and recoil is not just a function of the caliber, but that's probably the main factor. It's also a function of the weight of the gun, and it's also a function of the mechanical things that the gun does. So muzzle brake is one of those. Does it have a muzzle brake? That will factor in. Next thing would be, is it semi-automatic? That will also factor in. What recoil pad does it have? That will also factor into the felt recoil. So all those things combine to determine what level of recoil you want, and your caliber is a big choice of that. You would also need to know the price of your ammo. So if you can't afford to shoot 300 Win Mag, then you probably don't want to get a gun in 300 Win Mag. You might want to pick a gun in 223 Remington because that is significantly cheaper. Same thing with 308 Winchester. That is less expensive generally than 6.5 Creedmoor. The next thing would be availability of ammo. Again, 308 Winchester has far more availability of ammo than 6.5 Creedmoor, especially right now, and pretty much all the time. And then finally, your caliber choice is also going to be dependent on your distance, which is really part of the hunting or the type of game you're going to be hunting. If you know you're going to be hunting something very far away, you need to pick a caliber that you can shoot very far away, like 600 plus yards away, which in most hunting applications would pretty much never happen because you pretty much cannot really even see things that are 600 yards away, generally. That doesn't mean it can't happen. I just am saying that for most people's hunting is like within 100 yards or within 200 yards at kind of the furthest, most likely distance. Most of it's even closer. Most of it's, somewhere between 50 and 200 yards, something like that. So if you need something for a very long distance, then you probably already know which caliber you want. You don't need my suggestions. I would suggest picking something that is cheap in the power band you need and low recoil in the power band you need. So I also mentioned 243 Winchester. 243 is also kind of like that upper end of small game to lower end of medium game, just like 30-06 and 270 are in the upper end of medium game and also at the low end of medium large, if that makes sense. So I'm going to give you some recommendations for what I think you should buy. If I was going to suggest a gun for most people, the first thing I'd ask is what type of gun, what kind of animal are they hunting? After that, I would suggest that's probably going to determine the caliber, but from there, pretty much all the bolt action rifles are all chamberable in all those calibers, with the exception of maybe 22 long rifle, because That's pretty rare to find a full-size bolt-action rifle chambered in .22 LR. They're generally smaller. Although I guess they have the Ruger American, so no, I guess that doesn't hold true. But if we're going to pick a full short-action cartridge size that utilizes most of the action type, I would say look for these things. Pick something that is lightweight, something that when you pick it up, you're saying, hey, that's pretty lightweight. This gun is actually, it seems to have gotten heavy. That's the trend for getting guns, is that you think that it's lightweight at the beginning, and then it just tends to add stuff. You add stuff. Like if I wanted to save some weight, I'd take the muzzle brake off. If I wanted to save even more weight, go iron sights, I'd take the scope off. For me, I wanted the flexibility of choosing to have a threaded muzzle on this gun. But for most people, I'd recommend either a 6.5 Creedmoor or 308. And the reason I choose those two are because they are kind of medium power range. So they thrive in that medium-sized game role, but you could perhaps take them and shoot smaller game with them. I wouldn't recommend it. It seems like a waste of ammo. And you could pick a lighter recoiling caliber, but you could. And in a pinch, you probably could flex them into taking medium-large to larger game. Again, I wouldn't recommend it because it's outside of its power band, generally accepted power band range, but you could do it. And so if you're trying to go for a dual gun, that can kind of do it all, and it will thrive in the medium-sized game. I would suggest getting a medium profile barrel like this. This is medium profile. And with that, you have the potential to have a threaded muzzle. Or I would suggest getting a pencil barrel if you don't need a threaded muzzle. So if you're somebody who is going to be using, let's say, this weight of gun, and you want the flexibility of lowering your recoil, like I did, with a muzzle brake, then you would want to get a medium profile. But if you want the absolute lightest weight possible and you already know ahead of time that you're comfortable with that level of recoil for your particular caliber and your particular gun, then I would suggest getting a pencil barrel or a hunting profile barrel, whatever you want to call it, a thin profile barrel, because that'll save you a lot of weight. I would say it absolutely should be a bolt-action rifle, unless you just want to try something else, good on you. But I would recommend a bolt-action rifle for everybody because it is very inexpensive to build them, relatively, compared to other action types. And it gives you repeatability, so you can shoot multiple rounds without totally reloading the gun. And it gives you great accuracy for the price. I would also say choose a fairly basic scope. I'm going to link the video to Gun Blue 490's video, but this scope is pretty basic. This is a Burris full field 4. I think it's a 2.5 to 10. Yeah, 2.5 to 10. So this gun is intended to be a pretty close range hunting gun. And it doesn't have a lot of features. It's pretty much just got caps on the turrets, and that's about it. So pretty simple, and that's how I wanted it. I didn't want it to have a whole lot of features. Nice simple scope. You should check out that video if you're looking to buy a scope though. So here's some actual suggestions of models of guns that you should look at. I would recommend, not necessarily in any particular order, I'd recommend the Tikka T3X, the Ruger American, the Savage Axis, or the Savage 110, or 111, or 11, or whatever number they use nowadays. This is a 110. That's kind of their flagship model of gun. I would also recommend a Remington 700, or I'd recommend a Remington 783, or I'd recommend a Howa 1500, or a Weatherby Vanguard, which are those two last ones are they're basically the same gun. And then I'd also recommend a Thompson Center Contender. I think those guns are all, sorry, not the Contender, the Compass. I think it's called the Compass. It's like around $200, $300, somewhere in there. All those guns are they all have their own lines of guns that all have lots of variations of all those features we just discussed. And from there, I think it's just a matter of picking what you want and picking what your price range is, and holding them in your hand and deciding if you like those features, because they are all almost equal in terms of accuracy. Not all of them, but they're all acceptable accuracy, and I think they are all acceptable quality. I didn't recommend any guns that I think are in bad quality. Even the Remington 700, which people, talk trash about Remington all the time, and for good reason. However, this gun has been very reliable, and it's been very durable, and I don't have any qualms about this gun, and it's been very accurate. So don't believe everything that you hear on the internet. It has some validity to it, but it is not as overblown as a lot of people like to make it out to be. I think all of those ones are good recommendations, and all of those ones will serve you very well for your hunting application. I'd like to know what your hunting gun of choice is. If you were going to choose one gun for somebody as a recommendation, what gun would you recommend for somebody to pick? I'm always interested in hearing that kind of thing. So I hope this has been helpful for you. If you're somebody who's brand new to picking a hunting gun, boy, there's a lot of choices, right? Well, I think just start by picking the things that are important to you. Know your level of recoil that you can handle. Decide on a caliber ahead of time. And from there, you can pretty much order exactly the gun you want. There's tons of websites that you can look through of, all these guns. And hopefully now you can understand what features, they are all similar in the features they offer. None of them really are that different. They just have a different brand name. They have different degrees of bolt throw. They have different bolt handles. They have, little things that differentiate them. But at the end of the day, they have all those features that I just described. They have, profile of barrel, action length, stock type, adjustable stock versus non-adjustable stock, threaded muzzle versus non-threaded muzzle, iron sights versus non-iron sights, adjustable trigger versus non-adjustable trigger. So all those things, pretty much all of the manufacturers are all competing with their particular little package of gun, and then they make many, many different types of packages of gun for your money. So I hope this has been helpful for you to determine what you're looking at when you're at that gun counter and you're confronted with all these choices and you're like, I don't really know what it is I'm looking at. Well, they are trying to make a gun for a specific person who has a specific purpose. So you need to decide first, what's your purpose? Thank you very much for listening, and then good luck on your hunt for a hunting gun, and be safe out there and happy hunting. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.